There is nothing, absolutely nothing, half so much worth doing as simply messing about in boats. This sentiment was never more true than at Grande Maumelle Sailing Club. As the newly constructed Lake Maumelle filled with water in 1959, a small group of sailors attended the formative meeting of the Grande Maumelle Sailing Club at the home of Harold and Betty Jane Doherty. The club began its existence at that very meeting. Its only infrastructure consisted of a space on the parking lot of Jim's Landing, a commercial boat dock on Lake Maumelle. Members would trailer their boats from their homes, rig them on the parking lot, launch, race, and then reverse the whole process. There was no clubhouse, club docks, or anything that belonged to the club, just permission to use a small area of the parking lot at Jim's Landing. But it was very exciting to the new members of the fledgling sailing club. The first racing began that spring with a small aluminum fishing boat serving as a committee boat, and buoys made of styrofoam shipping boxes with trash cans on top. The fleet consisted of mostly Y flyers, along with several other boats in different classes. After a year or two of commuting from town to parking lot and back, the club was allowed by the water board to use some land across the small bay from Jim's Landing. This move established the club as separate from the 3 commercial boat docks then on the lake. Members moved a small building to the site for use as a clubhouse and used an old section of the original Highway 10 as a launch pad, and thought it was wonderful.
Bill Graham was one of the early sailors, and he was one of the engineers who built this lake. And he had told us a year before the lake came to be that it was going to be. And so he had entree to the water board. And then, of course, the water board has been our best friend from the beginning. They were all fishermen, the water board people, and they really didn't like motorboats on the lake. Sailboats, okay. So they were for us from the beginning.
By 1967, this location was not adequate, and the club moved to its present location with a sublease from Maumelle Harbor. The parking lot was cleared and graveled, and a pavilion and launch ramp were built.
It was tough because you had to lift that mast and re-rig the boat every race. So when we got an opportunity to move somewhere where we could leave our boats, it made racing a lot more fun, and we got a lot more members racing with us.
That same year, Clark Gillespie, the Commodore who crewed for his wife on a Y flyer, decided that GMSC should host the Y Flyer Nationals. He made a pitch to the Y National Fleet leadership with a rendering of a proposed clubhouse and lots of great pictures of our beautiful lake. His enthusiasm, the beauty of the lake, and the absence of large power boats were big factors in the decision to bring a major regatta to Little Rock for the first time. The Commodore then returned home and announced to the small membership of about 40 that GMSC would host the Y Flyer Nationals the very next summer. The somewhat elaborate clubhouse design was scrapped, and a simpler building was constructed above the parking lot on a prominent point. A new T-dock was installed, stretching out into the lake from the pavilion, and a concrete deck, fondly named Kiko's Corner, was constructed next to the launch ramps, with a makeshift crane that could be used to launch centerboard boats.
So our infrastructure here was in no condition to have in 1968. The clubhouse was built that winter. The parking lot had already been made and the launch ramps. The pavilion had been built. But the club struggled to be ready and was ready for a sensational 1968 Y Flyer National Championships.
A mobile home was brought in to act as a temporary race headquarters, and electricity was run to the pavilion. The regatta was a big success and a defining moment for the club. Central Arkansas suddenly became aware that there was an active sailing club just west of Little Rock. New boats and sailors started showing up at GMSC, and the membership grew during the following years, as did the facilities.
We brought in some people, Clark Gillespie, for instance, and after a while Max, and they are two of the people that have made the biggest difference in this club. Clark had the imagination, and Max knew how to get it done. And between the two of them, things grew from a funny little place over on Jim's Landing to this.
After the championships, after that year, the club had exhausted its energies for a while and nothing much happened until 1970. I became Commodore that year, and I found that the club was ready to go to work.
Building the infrastructure needed to support a growing club was a real challenge. In 1970, there was a major reorganization of the club's bylaws and racing program. The board was expanded from 5 officers to 15. A race committee boat and crash boats were also purchased.